And good evening. Welcome to Let's Talk Real Talk on Parental Alienation. And today, September 10th, 8th, is Grandparents' Day. Today, we welcome our special guest. She's a grandmother, alienated, um, Wendy MacDonald from Burlington, Ontario. And also, we have our special guest, as usual, Andy Martens from the Sioux. We have Molly. And we're going to touch on Grandparents' Day today. So, welcome, Andy. Tell
Thank you,
us
Mary.
what's going on with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I'm at the cusp of this stuff here. I'm a grandparent. So my granddaughter was born,
Congratulations.
thank you, on June the 9th of this year. But there was an issue that my son and I had about, he wanted me to co-sign on finishing his PhD and stuff. And I said, I can't do it. My wife almost died a year ago, and I'm in a crunch if something happens to her. So that created a problem. And this is another angle of alienation. People can alienate you if they don't like something you did, alienate you by using his daughter. So my wife gets all the pictures and phone calls, and I don't get a damn thing.
So
So
sorry to
there's
hear that.
another. But I think I've let it go now. We haven't spoken in almost 2.5 months, but I think it can come through because the the uh, car that finally got solved, and I will get paid that, and loan that I helped my son with. I've done more than any other person on this planet for my son and his wife. So uh, it's and that's a fact. So I think there's room to work it out, to move
Hmm.
it and stuff. But what I feel angry about, Wendy, and you, of course, Mary, you most of all, you might not have that reversal. Like, I think I can work my way out of this alienation. You guys don't have that option right now.
No, because our kids were alienated at a young age. Don't you think, Wendy?
Yeah, definitely because we have the brainwashing factor, right? So our children start getting brainwashed very early, whereas you're a very new grandfather, Andy. So we're going to keep
What do
our
you
fingers crossed
what do
for
you
you.
think about that? Using alienation of a newly born grandchild as a tool to when you don't like an answer that I gave him. Is that something you've seen before? Where there's no
Many times.
alienation, yeah, no, there's no alienation history here, but
No,
yet that was used.
it's a sign of entitlement that if you don't give them what they want, they will take away what would be the best thing that you possibly could
Right.
have. And that right now is a grandchild.
And that sort of entitlement and comes from Mary and I talked earlier. We talk every day. We talked earlier. It's entitlement. I'm entitled to this. You gift me $40,000. Doesn't matter your situation. It's all about them. They don't put any. They don't bother to see what the other person's situation is like. My father said it's always you need to put yourself in the other person's shoes. Don't think about yourself all the time. Don't talk about yourself. Talk about the other person.
Yes. Yes.
So anyway, I'm trying to work out a work. I'm going to put some effort into trying to work my way out of this. But a good friend of mine uh, didn't have that option either. There are some nasty women out there. Her son had this woman had a child with her, but they go on. They drop them and they take the child, never to be seen by the grandmother, and they keep moving. This woman is on her fourth relationship and gets pregnant on every one of them. How
Oh,
nasty is that?
I have a sister-in-law that has a sister, and she has 7 children from 7 different men. That's the
Wow.
God's truth. You know, she came from a huge family, and she wanted a large family, but 7 different fathers? Come on.
Oh, that's
Mm.
incredible.
And how many of those fathers are an active participant in those children's
Well,
lives?
there probably one
Every
was
single one of them.
really.
He's kept every male, every single one of them in touch with their
So
children.
so
Apart.
not so none of them are in touch with their children.
No, they are.
All of them.
They
Oh, they
are.
are. Okay, good.
They are.
Good.
Every child gets to go with a father.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? Yeah, she has her bad points, but we have to give her credit there where credit is due, right? Because at
Oh,
Yeah.
least she's
can
not
you
taking the
imagine?
children away.
Can you
Yeah.
imagine Christmas and birthdays and oh my parents got divorced too, but what a mess! I give her credit, sure, but what a mess that could be technically, theoretically, right?
Right. But, you know, she was willing to make it work. I got to give her credit for that. I love her dearly. She's my
Yeah.
sister-in-law, but, you know, she's not married to
Wow.
any of my brothers, but she never did marry them. She did get married once and no children. But then she had 7 children with 7 men. Yeah.
Now the funny part is my friend's son got that, but my friend was the same thing happened where she was wife number 3 with 2 kids. And this guy had 4. Now he's living 20, 25 years with wife number 5 or common law wife number 5.
Mm.
Unbelievable where you have that happen and then your son has the same thing happen again. Almost like alienation, Mary.
Sounds like it, eh?
Well, the thing is, that's why we're trying to get rid of the bias, right? Because in that factor, that's where the woman has all control. Because she can either choose to tell the partner that she's even pregnant, or she can choose to walk away. Most of the time, they don't choose to walk away. They use the baby as a carrot to dangle over the father's head, right? So then it becomes, oh, well, unless you pay me child support, you're not seeing your children. But to me, that's a money transaction. Children aren't to be bought, they're not to be sold. And 50-50 is the way to go because we're all going to have extracurricular activities and extra expenses. And you have to be able to co parent with that in order to be able to raise your children in a very happy, healthy environment. They need to understand that even though mommy and daddy are not together, they were created out of love, and mommy and daddy need to learn to work together in order to raise these children in a healthy manner. Where is your Andy? I don't think your son is in your city, is he? He's a
No, he
bit of a
is
distance
not. He
away,
is in
right?
the United States, yeah. In the state of Texas.
Which is the unfortunate thing because then if he continues the alienation because now with the technology there is you should be having regular access and regular visitation and you can do that through Zoom as well. You can do that in any way with the media nowadays, right?
That's right, yeah.
So and the thing is, with him being so far away, what you need to do is establish a relationship, a permanent relationship with that child, so that child knows who you are and knows that you exist. Because then what's going to happen? Because you're going to end up having to fight cross boundaries, which is going to make it a lot more difficult with your case, especially because you don't have an established relationship
Well,
with the
that's right.
grandchild.
My granddaughter, my son's daughter, was born in the United States, so she automatically becomes an American citizen, which makes it more challenging.
Yes.
Yeah, she's an American citizen, and we're here in Canada, so the
And it makes it
USCCA.
harder for them to distance from them to makes it easier for them to distance themselves from you and decide whether they want to or whether they don't want to pick up the phone. So the best avenue for you
Oh,
would be doing have
definitely.
some kind of contract or agreement, whereas you say, this is when I want to see the grandchild. Can we make arrangements to have it the same time every week? So at
Well,
least you
you're
can keep
right, Wendy.
establishing that relationship, right?
My time is limited here. You can't. The more time goes by, the tougher it's going to be.
Right. The
Yeah.
longer you wait, the worse it gets because they forget. They forget who you are. They forget about you. They forget that you ever existed. It's really horrendous on what they
And
do
your
to.
grandchild is so small that they have no memory right now either, right?
Right. Now's the time to move on it.
Yes,
Yeah,
and they say
absolutely.
if you have if you haven't established a relationship in 5 years, then you're SOL. You can't do
Yeah.
anything anymore, which is sad because, sometimes family go overseas and families don't get to see the kids for 2, 3, 4 years because of work relation, right? And so what's the difference that, that they can go over and work and, they get to talk to you on Zoom or, they send pictures, you call. But when you're alienated, they cut all that off. You don't get phone calls, you don't get Zoom. And, sometimes you may never see them again.
Well, that's
So
right. Yeah. I mean, technology is there, but if the relationship is really bad, it's not going to be used and it's really not going to help you either.
that's right. That's what I'm
That's
getting
right.
at. That if
And
you have a good relation,
I have a question for Mary. Your son is he in the Navy or the Army?
he's in the Navy.
He's in the Navy. Now, do they have anything kind of set up where it's like family day or visiting day or any type of events where you can kind of make yourself shown up there?
Oh yeah, regularly. They even have family therapists. I mean, the military, Navy, the Air Force, there's no difference between any of them. Support families 100%. But because I had the ex's mistress impersonate me, she trashed me, so I can't even get phone calls in to my son's unit without being hung up on. It's I have been sabotaged. My name, my identity, everything has been stolen. So to get my son any kind of communication, they don't believe me who I am. So
Or is it that they know who you are and he pretty much said, this is my mother, this is her name. If she calls, I'm not answering, I'm not here, I'm not around.
But I think that
it could
that's
be
the
that
case.
too. It
Yeah.
could be that
And
too. But I had a conversation for my son's birthday, and the dispatch, the same type of job that I did with the military, getting in touch with children adults, young adults who ran away and joined the Navy or the Army or the Air Force, and their families have been looking for them. So I got them in touch. And this one gentleman was so polite, so nice, so excited that, oh, Cameron's mom, so cool. It's nice. And he gave me all the information that I needed to contact my son while he was sailing out down by Vancouver, I believe, over the summer. And never did get a message back from him, but they did support him. My call this time. This was really something that, I felt good about. And I think I'm not going to quit. I'm still going to pursue. I still call, but I'm not getting anywhere.
if
And
you
for his
have one
sister,
thing, if you had one thing to say to the Navy to promote healthy relationships instead of promoting alienation, what is it that you would tell them?
Oh, wow. I would tell them, because I did this job myself, how important it is for family, because our children need a parent to run home to go home to support them over the times that, you know, they're out in the field, they're out in Afghanistan, they're here, there, and everywhere. So mentally, they're not getting that security that they've longed for. So I would like the Navy, the Army, and the Air Force to know that they should be protecting the family unit after the kids have left home, and how important it is for the future children that they have to be nurtured in a good way so that they have family ties, family bonds for future, because it's the children, the wives, the spouses, the husbands, whoever support the soldiers, the officers, and the the reserves and the Navy. They are the ones um, that will inspire these soldiers to come home to a loving family. It's the family they leave behind. These families are the most important, whether they are
Well, I
parents,
I think it's
grandparents.
an interesting perspective for the fact that your son is in the Navy. He's a top-ranking sergeant. He has all these credentials behind him, and people who are in the Army and the Navy, they're put into the task, and the most important job in the world is to protect their country. And it's hard to fathom as an alienated parent how this child, and I will say the term child because he is your child, no matter how old he is your child. And this is what we want the government to understand, that it doesn't matter how old these children are, they're still our children. Regardless if they've aged out of the system or age majority or whatever, they're still our children. But with him being in the Navy, being put into that perspective, but then he's alienated from his mother and some of the
And
horrible
his
things that
grandmother
come back. And his
and the
grandmother,
grandma,
who's in
92
her
years old.
92 years old, right? So how is he capable? And we already know the mental health factor that happens to these adults when they're gone to war, when they're gone and they're on a mission and they have to do all these things, and they see all their army buddies who've gotten killed, and that they come back with many more mental health issues with PTSD, and this enhances it. So how are they able to protect their country if they can't protect their own family? And this is the correlation that we need to understand when it comes to somebody who's in such a high position, right? And a high ranking.
That's right. That's right. And you know, it's they will never sustain a healthy relationship with whether they're in the Army, the Navy, or the Air Force, because they're always walking around in this traumatized state that, oh, I wish I saw my mom, or I wish I saw my dad, or I miss my brother or my sister, my aunt, my uncles. They're not all there. They're not whole without their family. They're lost. They have an empty hole in them. And who's to stop them from hurting another soldier or putting a gun so easily to the opposing one that's, you know, during wars and stuff? They won't, they're conditioned not to feel anything.
Do you
And
think that this might be them wanting to get into an army because it's a way of to be able to release their aggression on other people? Because then at least if they do kill somebody in war, it's not like they're under the usual standards as a civilian, right? Who's been arrested and charged with murder and everything else, and who goes to jail with a lifetime. This doesn't happen for the army people, right?
no, good point, Wendy. And this is what I've been saying. They run away to let that release. A lot of them end up school shooting, killing children, innocent kindergarten kids or whatever. But when they join the Army, they get to kill. This is the mentality that my ex-husband went with, that, oh, he gets to shoot whoever he wants and no one's going to stop him. And now he's raised our children the same way, to be women haters, to be men haters. I mean, my son is a woman hater. I found him on the dark web. He's recruiting young kids into the Army, Navy, and he's on the dark web in his tidy whities, having women throw china at him. Like, what is this? Like, these family courts that have allowed this abuse to continue, they don't realize what they've done to these kids.
It's a fact. I've seen it. Mary showed me the picture. I've seen it. It's reality.
It's reality. And, this is how
Yeah.
Russell Williams got into killing
Oh,
and everything he did. And, we're trying to protect our kids from all this kind of abuse. What kind of mother am I to allow my son to do that?
Yeah.
The army takes them to places to save people, help elderly, sick children, and everybody going through war, but yet he leaves his mother and his grandmother behind. It's sad. It's really sad.
Well,
well,
it just shows that they're really getting mixed messages, right? Because they're in war, fighting combat, and killing people, but yet they're going out and helping people too. So that just even shows that they don't know which way they're supposed to turn, right? And
They
I
don't.
think this was kind of like an educational factor for Andy too, because Andy, this is what's going to happen, and then it's going to become a generational pattern, and your grandchild is going to be suffering these mental health issues as well, because
well,
they've already.
here's the thing, Wendy. Sorry to interrupt you. Here's the thing. My son has not rejected a phone call from me yet. We just haven't talked. I haven't
Okay.
called him, and he hasn't called me. But the first, I have not. He has not hung up or anything like that on me.
Good.
So we were going to test that this coming week and see. I'm going to call him, and he obviously didn't call me. So enough time has gone by, and we're going to test it to see, is this reality or not?
Yeah,
Mhm.
reach out to him and see if you can do like a FaceTime or something with the grandbaby.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
because I'll find out. I need to find out here where we're at now after 2.5 months.
Yes, you need to get it, nip it right in the bud, and end it. Just say, stop using the child to hurt me, because that's what they do. And
That's
this
right.
is what an alienating parent does for revenge, to seek revenge on the targeted parent. It could be a man or it could be a woman. It doesn't matter. Abuse has no gender. But the alienating parent, say a father like my ex, uses the children because I left them. There's reasons why people leave each other, and if you can't sever that bond in an amicable way, there's trouble. There's a lot of trouble there, because it wasn't that I left him because I had an affair or something. It was him having an affair.
Right.
But yet he has an affair, he has a mistress, and yet I go to prison because he called the police on me. Then he used the children to lie to the police. And I was proven innocent, but yet I still get condemned in one court and innocent in another court. So these family court systems are promoting lies. So our children are growing up to become liars, pathological liars. They become um, con artists. You can't trust them. You really can't trust them, because the stuff that they say about a parent is unbelievable. And it's not just me. I mean, there's millions of parents out there that are getting trashed so bad that they end up in prison for 20, 30 years. And all of a sudden, 30 years later, oh, your kid just confessed that you didn't do it. Where's that person's life? What happened to that person's life? So this needs to stop. unless they have 100% evidence in the family courts that you've abused your child, don't pit them against the other parent. 50-50 is what has to happen in these courts. And in these court systems, we need the cameras to show how these judges and lawyers are literally making it worse for the targeted parent. They don't have a say in their parenting time. They don't have a say in anything, the medical, the school. I got kicked out of a school, or I didn't get kicked out of the school. I got stopped from going to the school. I had to get permission from my children to go to their school. They were 15, 17, and 18 years old, but I raised them for 15, 17, and 18 years all by myself. And yet now I have to go get permission. And to get those kids to answer you, there was no conversations, no nothing. Like, they were literally cut off from me. So if I had the chance to do it all over again, I'd stand in front of that doorway and I'd say, you know what, police, come get me. These are my kids. You have no right to stop me. And CAS have no right to take your children unless they have proof, evidence. So this is getting a little...
The police took action, Mary, on something that was fabricated. It wasn't the truth, and that's wrong.
That's right. If they did fear my life, why did the police step in the door after being invited by a 15-year-old and an 18-year-old? How much were they scared of me when the father ran out of the house with a 16-year-old to the mall and called from there? How much did he buy her to say, let's get mom in jail, you know? And then say he feared the children's lives, so he took them out of the house? No. It's right there the police should have known, you know? And as they're putting me in the police car, taking me away from ripping me out of my children's arms, they said, be grateful we're taking you to the cells and not the morgue. So they knew he was an abuser, because I had called earlier, a few weeks earlier, maybe 2 weeks earlier, and they seemed to forget, that she called. You know, so now they're making up all these lies and protecting
You
the
should have
abuser.
been putting your ex in the police car, not you in that 2005.
Yeah, I think the police act too quickly and too hasty without doing an initial investigation, which should have happened. It was more or less, oh, he said she did this. All right, well, you have the right to remain silent. And that's exactly what they do. But there's got to be something to protect it, because of, especially for somebody who has never been in trouble with the law, this is something that can cause irreversible damage. It is so traumatic for somebody to be put in handcuffs and arrested who has never had to deal with anything like that before. But unfortunately, it becomes such a common occurrence that now it's just, it's more looked at as, even if you are doing it, we're not going to look at it anyways, because you guys are getting a divorce and everything's going back and forth, right? So it's like the investigations are not being done properly on either end.
Not at all. Not at all. And if they do get calls like that, they should take both people in and investigate there. You know, someone's going to crack. Someone's going to say, okay, look, I only said it because whatever. You know, it was a heated moment.
It's the he said, she said, right? So if you don't know who said what and he said or she said, then yeah, both of these need to go. They need to do an investigation. And especially if you have marks on one person and there's no marks on another. So, but yet the one who has the no marks is the one who's making the call. Because it's usually the police will go by whoever makes that first initial call is the one who's not going to get in trouble. It's
Right.
going to be the other one, and that's usually the factor of what happens.
Yeah, a lot of these police aren't trained on domestic abuse. They're scared to go enter the homes. They have no idea what they're getting into. So, if they have, when they get a call and it's about domestic abuse, they should be bringing a specialist with them, instead of just taking the first person's word and hauling out someone that's caring for a child. I was making dinner when the police came. My daughter had to come and get me to help me because I was just involved in a major car accident 5 months prior. So I couldn't walk. So I had to get my 15-year-old to help me walk to the door. And yet the police still took me. I was covered in medical braces. And, here I said to him, I said, he's 225 pounds, 6 feet tall. I said, are you serious? Like, really? And the kids didn't hear anything. One child just got home. The 15-year-old was over at a sleepover. That night, she tells the police, oh, I wasn't home. I heard nothing. And then during the court, it was 5 months later. Oh, the drama, she says. And then 18 years later, oh, I heard her say to that she's going to kill my dad and all this. Like, they're brainwashing these kids to the point where these kids are lost in their way and don't remember what they said years prior. So there's a pattern of abuse now through my children. My adult children are extremely abusive. I feel sorry for anybody that's, has to have a relationship with them without knowing their mental health issues. And one of my children, she was 26 at the time and was looking for her citizenship so that she can be a Canadian citizen, because they were born overseas and our government was stripping them of their German citizenships. And she needed her citizen papers from Europe to change over. And she says, oh, by the way, I got engaged. And I was so happy to hear from her because I haven't heard from her in 11 years. And she never did get married. The next thing I see on her social media page within a year saying she was meant to be single. So, she was so happy about getting engaged to becoming depressed and severe anxiety. She told Justice Caraccia on the Zoom trial, and it was 2 years ago on the 6th of September, we ended it. She was telling her that she can't sustain a healthy relationship with anyone, not even herself. She cries suicide. She was 34 years old. And now my youngest is 34, and she's writing me saying that I will never see my grandchildren, my future grandchildren, I should say. And that when she does have grandchildren, she will tell them how abusive I was. And I'm thinking, you have never been abused, child. Like, she even said that she was never hurt, but she watched me beat the other two. And I'm thinking, why would I do that? If I'm going to, like, this is so sad on how they can't face reality anymore. They don't know what's reality, and they just grab onto anything to make the alienating parent love them more because they're on condition now, right? They can't
Yeah.
get love from an alienating parent. Naturally, there's no unconditional love there. And that's how we've always raised them, with love, no matter what they did, whether they were good or bad. And an alienating parent will dangle carrots in front of their faces. Oh, you do this for me and you'll get that. Or you want your rent paid next month? Well, you better go trash your mother. Or, it's sad. You can't.
It's always conditional love, and that is
Yeah.
the danger point. What I'm thinking with my son, you mean it was all conditional love all this time, and then when I finally said no to something, then I thought it was unconditional love both ways. But when I said no, then it's conditioned. oh, okay, now it's going to switch because I said no.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe
Yeah.
we've spoiled our kids all along here.
What
Are we
that's
to
what
blame for that? We've given them too much.
too much. And that's what we were
Yeah.
saying. My kids were so spoiled. They were spoiled in a way that I always took them wherever they wanted to go and I brought them home. I didn't give them that access to roam free, but they got to go anywhere they wanted. Like, I mean, my daughter, she even flew, believe it or not, to New York City to go see Santana. I gave up my ticket to fly to New York City for my 16-year-old daughter. And, who does that but me? But I thought, if I give them all that they can have in a home instead of out on the street begging for them to come home, I thought that they were going to be there forever. Like I wouldn't have any problems because they knew they got to go anywhere they wanted. But it just seemed like soon as the father got access to the two teenage girls, 15 and 17-year-olds, she ran away from him and lived with a crack addicted mother, alcoholic. And yet I get called crack addicted alcoholic mother. And it just didn't make sense on what these kids are doing to their parents. So it's the judges and the lawyers that I hold responsible because they can say, okay, you know what? I don't believe you. Prove that your mother did this or prove that your father did this. This is how justice system should work. Give the benefit of the doubt to both parents, right?
Yeah,
Exactly.
absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the unfortunate part because too many people know that they're within the right in a domestic violence situation. All they need to do if they want to get rid of that partner is just remove them from the house. And once they've removed them from the house, if they're not back within 10 days, your house and everything you worked your entire life for can be taken away from you instantly. And
Yep.
I've seen it happen. And that's the unfortunate part because it all goes to the abuser, right? Because the
Yep.
abuser is the one who runs out and ends up winning in the long run, right?
Yep.
But
Well, that's where I
it's
ended up. I was kicked to the curb right after the next day I was released. My father and my big brother, John, bailed me out of jail. Where do I go? Nowhere. I had nothing. No money, no assets, no bank account. Even that was shut down. He shut everything down on me. And I ended up in a woman's shelter for 17 months. And then when my trial or my sentencing was over, I was sentenced to the Salvation Army with young kids. I was 46 years old. I had to go and do time with the Salvation Army for a week. And my last day, he set the young one up to call me. It was my birthday. She calls. I come down to the corner where I met her. He looked out the window, saw me. Next thing I know, I'm going back to jail. And the sentence was longer. So by the time the status quo was established, I lost my kids. I lost my home. I was, like I said, living in the shelter for 17 months. And my bank account wasn't released. The judge held everything closed. And this is how a lot of parents lose their jobs because they can't get to work. They have no access to their bank accounts. They lose everything. They can't pay their
and
mortgage.
this is another testament that we think about homeless people. But as one, I was there as well myself, living on the streets of Toronto, trying to do everything I could at 14 years old to survive. And this actually just adds another perspective to it that sometimes bad things just happen to good people and anybody can be homeless. Somebody can wake up one day and everything can be gone. And especially if you're going through the court system, it doesn't have to be an addiction. It doesn't have to be just because you don't want to work. There are other extenuating circumstances of why somebody becomes homeless.
Yes. And you got to wonder why there's so many of them out there, because they're losing their homes. They have no way to fight to get their money back. Lawyers are taking so much out of
And
people.
after this happens to a person, there is no resources for them to
That's
get
right.
back on their feet. That's
There
the
was,
problem.
yeah, there was absolutely nothing out there for me other than church. I continued to go. I was very faithful to my religion. And it was what got me through a lot, was going to pray every week for my kids. And, I got myself back. I became better, healthier, stronger, because I was already kicked to the curb. You can't get any lower than that. I was disabled, so I fought and fought and fought. I went from a wheelchair to a walker to canes, and now I'm walking on my own. And, it's 20 years of struggle that I went through to get here today, to help others go through what I went through 20 years ago, which should not happen today. People should not go through what I went through 20 years ago, and yet they still are daily. Every 4 seconds, there's a child being ripped out of someone's arms during court divorces, separations. That should not happen. Every 4 seconds, a child is worth $350,000 dead or alive to the family court system, because they're getting all these incentives. This is why we need to stop what's happening in the family courts today. Children are worth, like you said, they should not be bought or sold.
Yeah.
Children are our lives. We wanted children for a reason. We wanted them to grow healthy, loving, kind, to love someone else, to have children on their own. My kids don't have kids, because why? Why would they bring their kids into this world with knowing what they just went through? They should not have gone through a divorce at 15, 17, and 18. They've never been married. They never had a partner. And yet here they are, stuck in family court for 20 years now. Yeah, many kids are like that. There's so many out there. I mean, Wendy, you're going through it with your grandchild. You
Yeah.
haven't seen your grandchild in 8 years. I mean, this
Yeah.
is so sad. And yet you live only miles apart.
Yeah.
And you have your daughter that doesn't get to see her son. Well, she gets to see her son, I guess, but she doesn't get to bring him around you.
But it's not without challenges either. Everything she does is always with challenges, right? She can't see him on her time or when it's convenient for him. It's always on conditions as well. And unfortunately, with my son, grandson, because she's not raising him, the condition is she don't have a relationship with her mother, or she don't get to see her son. So again, the caregivers of my grandson use them against his own mother as well, right? So nobody's immune from it.
No. And that's basically blackmail. You go see your
Yeah.
mother, you don't get to see your son. That should be a punish. That's a crime, blackmailing here in Canada. I know it is, but yet your sister gets to get away with it.
Yeah.
And how fair is that to someone who is struggling to see your grandchild? I mean,
Yeah.
what does it do to you? It makes your health deteriorate, shortens your life expectancy. We just lost a dad in Sweden. He was 54 years old, fighting 8 years for his son, Jan Kula.
And that's
He's,
only 2 years older than me. So I sit
yes,
there and I think, we never know when our number is up, and I won't stop fighting till my last breath, because poor Jan doesn't get the opportunity to rectify things and make things right with his kids, right?
that's right. The
And we've
last
had a
message.
lot of parents in the same position. They are
Yes.
not, they've lost their lives and haven't been able to rectify situations or reunify with their kids.
Right. And the last message he left me, and I have a sworn testament by him that PA has totally destroyed him and exhausted him. to the point where he couldn't fight anymore. And it is just so heartbreaking because here we are trying to help everybody out there. We don't ignore their calls or the messages or anything, but it's so heartbreaking when you hear a parent wants to kill themselves because they can't take the pain anymore. This is grandparents as well. I just had another grandparent the other day. She reached out crying, saying, Mary, I can't take it. I need to see my grandchild. It's been 4 years. And she's scared that she's going to die without seeing him. So, these parents that are holding back their parents, time to give up. We're older. We need to forgive on the tiniest little details that they seem to think that they could hold a child against. Unless it's severe abuse, then I could see them not wanting to talk to their elderly parent. But if there's no abuse, and yet they're telling their children, oh, you can't see your grandma or your grandpa because they abused me. Well, if they didn't abuse that child and you can't prove that they abused you, then something's wrong. It's just not right for a child to hear that, because we don't talk about how our parents or our whoever abused us, we keep that out of the conversation for our kids. We don't go around bad mouthing anyone, right? And then all of a sudden you go through a separation and divorce and an alienating parent starts bad mouthing you. So it comes in very hard ways. A lot of them don't end up getting out. They got murdered. They get killed right in front of the children. It's a very disturbing thing to go through. It's like you're living your child as if they were dead, but they are alive.
And that's when it leaves no closure for anybody, right? Because you're always going to grieve that child that's still alive. If there's closure and the child is actually dead, then you have the funeral, you put them in the ground, and you know where they are. But for alienated parents, you never know where your child is from 1 minute to the next. They could be all over their house, all over the place. And with their mental health factor, you just never know what they're doing. And especially if they do suffer from the mental health aspect of addictions or anything else, it's like, I dread any parent who has to get that phone call or is on the receiving end of that phone call that their child is accidentally overdosed, because they were cut out of that child's life and not be able to help them through it. Right.
Right.
And with the Domestic Violence Act, with people calling and reporting the domestic violence, when it comes to domestic violence, anything that happens to happen to domestic violence, there is a victim service unit in every police station, and they need to make these people more aware and more known, so that when a police officer attends a location on domestic violence, they have a victim service advocate coming with them.
Right.
Nobody
Right.
should be going through that alone, and without understanding the laws or understanding what the ramifications are for them and what's the next step after they've been arrested.
That's right. That's right. Because there's so many crooked cops out there that you don't even know if you're going to be going to a police station or out in the field. It's really scary out there. And,
Yeah.
this is something that really I think about a lot, especially now that I've been, advocating and speaking out there worldwide. And Andy and I just interviewed the Attorney General of Ontario, Doug Downey, and you and I, Wendy, we went to see Premier of Ontario, Doug Ford, in the last month. These are things, that other people should be doing as well. They shouldn't rely on just one or two advocates to do the dirty work for them. We all should be reaching out to all these constituents to say, help us, help my child before they end up becoming drug addicts, crack alcoholics, abusers. There's hope for our children just like weeks into it. But once they've gone past 2, 3, 4, 5, 20 years, it's harder for us to get them back.
Yeah, that's right. And that's why it's so important to advocate, advocate, advocate. Not only advocate, but you've got to be an activist and actually get out there. Attend the political events. Write letters to your political party. The more you get, you know the old saying, it's not who you know, or it's not what you know, it's who you know. So get in there. Start doing what you need to do in order to establish a relationship with the politicians and get them on your side. But sitting
Right.
at home isn't going to work for anybody.
Stop
It's not
talking
going to
about the
happen.
beer at the corner store or buying beer. This is a more important issue than beer.
Yes,
Yeah,
it is. I mean, look at Robert
absolutely.
Garza. Robert Garza in Texas trying to get the interference law there on child custody. We need to have Canadians do that as well. I mean, why is it that men can support Robert Garza and not us women here in Canada? I mean, we are fighting for the exact same thing, whether we're a man or a woman. Parent alienation exists because there is a vindictive parent, man or a woman. We are not discriminated against as for abuse. They're blaming both of us for no reason. So
And I
this is
think
what
the thing is too, we're on the opposite end of that because we know what the statistics are, but the fact is, people want to say that the number of alienated fathers outweighs the alienation of mothers. But then when you look at it, how many fathers actually call to discuss? Because we're still at that phase where fathers still are silent. They're not speaking. Whereas we hear from all the women a lot more than we do the fathers.
that's right. And you know, it's a lot of these fathers who stay silent that are hurting us because they should be supporting a mother or a father. It doesn't matter who it is. Women do support both. We know that men are getting abused out there too because our children are alienated. We have boys and girls going through the same thing, brother and sister. Both of them are going to end up being the abusers, right? So
Yeah.
who's to say that the brother and the sister are not going to get married and abuse their children? You know, we don't want to see this happening. We don't want mothers and fathers alienated from the children. We want 50-50 equal shared. Well, we can't get equal because a lot of them work out of town, whatever. But if the mother was always the parent staying home, well, the child should stay there. The father will continue to get their equal rights to come home to see these kids, to have weekends with him, daily visits, or 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. This is how it should be. That way the child will grow up knowing that they've got boundaries, there's limits, and that they get to be with both parents and make it so that they be excited to see both parents, not screaming and kicking to get out of the car because the other parent is looking to see their reaction. This is how narcissists work. They work on reaction. So when they see a child screaming and kicking, going to the mother after being alienated from her, that alienating father's got the grin on his face and say, see, they don't love you. So these kids hear it. These alienators need to stop talking bad about parents during drop-offs, pickups, you know, and don't say, oh, are you happy to be back with me after, you know, they're being picked up from the other parent? You should just ask or say, was it a great weekend for you too? You know, say it differently. It's your language that makes a difference for these children to not feel that ill stomach feeling because you're going to drill them on what they did with the alienating parent. That's none of your business. Once they leave, they're home with you. Go on, live on, the way you're supposed to as a good
That's
parent.
right. And I think a lot of parents have the problem of understanding that the rules that your spouse, at your ex-spouse's, may not be the same as your rules, but you need to accept that. And when it's your weekend, you make the rules, and when it's not your weekend, they make the rules. And that's just the way life is. Not everything is going to be same. Divorce is not the same. Life
No,
changes. Things move in different directions and you go at your different paces, right?
that's right. That's right. Well, we're coming to the hour, 55 minutes here. Andy, Wendy, I'm going to ask both of you one last question before we go. I'm going to ask the same. What would be your advice today if families were going through family court? I'll get Wendy to answer first.
The biggest advice I can give you, don't go to family court. If you don't have to go to family court, try to stay out of family court. There's many different avenues you can take besides family court. You need to look into them. You need to weigh your options. You need to weigh your pros and cons and write a list. Because the best way once you walk into a family court, you are giving a stranger the power over your entire family who doesn't know you, who doesn't know anything about you. He looks at what's put on paper and what's in writing. So if you can stay out of court, stay out of court.
Good
Yeah,
answer.
that's a good answer, Wendy. I would agree with that because I haven't spent a penny on family court, and I don't intend to start. I was in court when my parents got divorced a long time ago, and my father tried to keep both children together, and that's what the judge screwed up then. That he allowed my sister to go to with my mother, and that was a mistake because her second marriage was a disaster in the United States, in Cleveland, Ohio. So there were a lot of problems there, and I think a lot of that has led to alienation between her and I as a result of that divorce. Not my father. I lived with my father and my stepmother, who has done a lot for me in 50 years, but I think I took it on the chin with my sister. So my father had it right a long time ago to keep the children together. I think the result between my sister and I would have been different, but had that happened. So don't go to court. I agree. Work it out. Amicable divorce never leads to family court. Really make an effort to work amicably. Relationship is not that tough, really. You've got to make up your mind. Do you want it or you don't? Look at this relationship Mary and I do in the shows. It's you know, the dog's coming down here. My daughter's dog is saying, "Time's up." You know, it's you want to get along with that person and don't mess it up. It's simple. It's like a light switch.
Right. And for those out there who, when we say don't go to family court, don't go to family court, we have Mackenzie Friend. You can look that up. You could Google it. If you know, you can go pro se. You can get an advocate to help you. I know Wendy helps people with court documents. There's a lot of avenues out there to stay away from some of these ruthless lawyers. And if a lawyer is not working with you, get rid of them because they shouldn't be working against you. You're the one that's paying them. It's your money. It's like going in to buy a chicken from the grocery store and that chicken is bad. You're not going to bring it home. So why would you want a lawyer to sit there and, start yelling at you and okay, Andy, I'm going to say
I gotta
goodbye to
go.
you.
Yeah. Good night, everybody.
Good night,
Good
Andy.
night, Andy.
But yeah, you don't want a lawyer to do the same thing to you because it's just going to ruin your life. They're going to ruin your children and nothing good will come out of it. So Wendy, thank you so much for coming on. Happy Grandparents' Day to you. I know
Thank
your
you.
grandson probably feels your pain, I'm sure he knows by now that he's got a missing grandma, because they do put two and two together eventually. You've got two other beautiful grandchildren who is missing out on their cousins' lives. And that's another thing, because cousins are missing out on everything too. So
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah. So to all the grandparents out there dealing with this, my heart goes out to you, but don't give up. Maybe there's hope for someone that's watching the show today and say, yeah, I miss my grandma or miss my grandpa, and we need to get connected. So until next time, thank you, everyone out there, alienated parents, grandparents, and alienated children. Don't give up on one another. And we'll see you on Let's Talk Real Talk this Tuesday at 1 p.m. with another special guest. Thank you. Good night.